Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Gems of Life show. As always, we are on YouTube and CKMS Radio Waterloo 102.7 FM Radio Waterloo. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. As always, I have my two friends here, Jules and Nakeisha. Welcome.
Welcome. Hello,
Fadhwa.
everyone. Thank you
Hey,
guys
Nakeisha.
for tuning in and, just always being present with us. We appreciate you guys so much.
Wonderful. Jules, welcome.
Welcome. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, Nakeisha. It's great to be here with you guys on this beautiful day, wherever you are. Like Fadhwa said, hopefully you're enjoying whatever piece of nature you can.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We are happy to have you in our space and thank you for sharing your space and your time with us. So today's topic, I'm so excited because I know that majority of us, if not all of us, have gone through it. Myself, personally, I have experienced it, and you too can, personally and professionally. I'm talking about dealing with rejection. Yes. Have you ever been rejected by maybe somebody you had a crush on, or maybe at a position that you're looking forward to and you were rejected for it for whatever reason? Have you been rejected on your first date? You went on your first date and that's it, that's the last one. Have you been rejected by someone you held dear and close to? Whatever it may be. Rejection, wow. It's a big deal, and it actually leaves that scar for a very long time. So I have Jules and Nakeisha here today who will share their journey when it came to dealing with rejection and how they overcame it. So Jules or Nakeisha, I'm not sure who wants to start. Nakeisha, I'll hold you first here on the table. Do you remember the first rejection moment or experience that you were faced with?
Oh my goodness. When you talk about the word rejection, there's one thing that comes to mind, and it's very personal for me. For myself, I was born in Jamaica, and my dad migrated to Canada when my mom was pregnant with me. So I knew coming to Canada was my destiny. Like I grew up knowing that I was going to be in Canada one day. And I think I met my dad once before. My dad came to Jamaica once before I came to Canada. So I had this image of who my dad is. My dad was my knight in shining armor, my hero. I had like a huge image of who my dad was. So when I did came to Canada, and my dad is a wonderful person. Like I love my dad dearly, but I feel like my dad was one of those persons where he was married to someone that had more control than him. So the way that she treated us wasn't the way that we were used to being treated. So our relationship with my father was very estranged, and we don't have the bond that we should have. So I think growing up, especially in my early teen, I feel rejected by my dad. Not that he purposely reject me, but I think the rejection was more from what I have expected from my father. And, being on my own, I was on my own at 16 just because of the living condition at home, right? So I think that rejection hit me very hard, but I didn't really recognize how much it affected me growing up until honestly about 5 years ago when I was experiencing like depression. And when I went to counseling and everything, I recognized that depression was something that I've experienced often, but I didn't really know it as depression. You just go through the motion and you bounce back. You go through the motion and you bounce back. So I had to recognize that, I was stuck being this little girl that wanted her daddy, and I had to write a piece where daddy time is over and recognize that I had to father myself the way that I wanted, the way that I expected my father to father me, forgive him for who he is, forgive him for everything, and move forward. But recognizing that daddy time is over, that rejection piece or whatever it is that I expected will never happen, right? And just build the relationship where it's at and continue where it's at. And then I get to choose the type of relationship I want with my dad and my stepmother, right? And make sure that it's as healthy as it can be. So for me, that rejection, it affected my life. I wasn't able to have healthy relationship with men. And I think for me, it's because I was looking for what my dad wasn't, I was looking for my dad in all the guys that I've dated in the past, right? So I've met wonderful guys, but it just didn't work out because they weren't right for me, because whatever it is that I was expecting from them, they weren't able to give it to me. Only my dad could have done that. And it took me 39 years to recognize that. So it went on for a while. So that rejection could affect you drastically. And I think for myself, often tell people that I gave birth to Nakeisha at 39, because that's when I recognized my pain. I recognized what was going on with me internally, and I was able to take control of my life and just be the woman that I want to become, and just choose my own destination without you know, depending on anyone else to give me what it is that I was looking for internally. So that's my story of rejection.
Wow. Wow. That's that's so powerful, you know, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us can actually relate to what you just shared, right? And I'll come back to what you just said, because I have some stories that are really closer to what you just said. We'll go to Jules. Jules, what about you?
Well, thank you, Nakeisha, for that share. It just brought up all sorts of like rhythmic waves of memories of rejection and patterns. It's so amazing when Fadhwa said, hey, just think about rejection. I was like, wow, there are so many rejection stories. Where do you start? With a life full of, I'm 40 years old, so full of rejections. But depending on how you look at them, it's almost like I've parceled them differently in my memory. So I had to actually go back with a fine-tooth comb to go, wait a second, what were those pieces? And as I was thinking about it, I was listening to a podcast, and it said the things that we fear most are death and abandonment, which is rejection, right? That being left behind, not being accepted. And so when I thought about the biggest things in my life in relationship to rejection, is that I did my very best growing up to avoid rejection at all costs. And in my way, that was being a chameleon and being what I thought everybody else needed or wanted. And while also sticking out like a sore thumb, I realize now, because the first memory of rejection was my friend and I in grade 7. So you can imagine middle school, not the easiest time to be yourself. And my friend and I were dancing, and the lights were dark and the music was loud, and it was at a school dance. And one of my favorite songs came on. And instead of doing what I thought everybody else wanted and fitting into the crowd, music is one of those things that I can't help but move to. And if it's loud enough and the beat is right, Jules just jumps out. And I remember just dancing and like letting the music move me, closing my eyes and opening my eyes at the end of the song and realizing just how many people were there and that everybody was watching, and their reactions were frozen in a state of shock. And that was the first moment where I was like, oh my God, I put myself in a place where I was openly allowing myself to be rejected. Wow, that was really uncomfortable. I had several moments after that, actually in that same grade range, where I went to camp, and all the girls in my camp, I was the only girl who didn't have her period. And so they made fun of me, and they at all opportunities left me behind, rejected me, made fun of me. And I actually got pneumonia after that. So my reaction to that rejection was physical. I was deeply impacted by it in a way that I just couldn't even comprehend. And just like you, Nakeisha, I've realized only recently how deeply all of those patterns and programs have come into play. And actually choosing to be myself, but making the choice, not because I want to fit in or because I'm not afraid of rejection, because we all have that fear. It takes a lot of courage to not be afraid of other people's reactions, especially large ones. But it's become a process of recognizing, oh, that's my reaction, and that's my reaction based on wanting to not be rejected or abandoned. But really, how is it most powerful for of service to the world and honor to myself to be in this situation, choosing to be me or whatever that situation needs of me, versus just letting that fear of rejection rule me.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Two different experiences, and that's what we're talking about, right? Rejection could mean so many different levels for different people, different experiences. And yours, it goes back, and most of it actually stems from our childhood, and it just carries over. That's just beautiful. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jules.
Yes.
Yeah, well, for me, just like you said, it comes in so many different levels. And two of the ones that that stuck with me really was just like, again, in my childhood. And that was a young girl. And I'm pretty sure I shared this with you, Jules, but I never looked at it in that way until recently, is that oftentimes the biggest rejection that we often miss out on, and we miss out on looking at, is the self-rejection. And we can always go back and trace other people, how they rejected us, and how the abandonment, and that how that filled that void within us, right? Just like Nakeisha talked about. But for me, it was the self-rejection. I was a young girl, and growing up in Africa, I was this skinny little girl, and I was made fun of. So I grew up with that mindset. I grew up with that image in my mind as the skinny spaghetti legs girl. And at the age of 16, I one day look at myself in the mirror. I did not recognize the young girl, the young woman actually, who stood in front of me in that mirror. The image and what I saw of myself, what I thought of myself to be, was two different people. The image that I had in my mind was that of a skinny young girl. And the image that I saw in front of me was completely different. And what happened was I immediately rejected the image in front of me because I could not relate to it. That voice that kept saying, you are the little skinny girl. Remember, you're the one who used to faint in school assembly. That's not you. And immediately, that was the day I crushed that image right in front of me. And I didn't realize that moment shaped my entire life, right into my adulthood. It's just 3 years ago that I came to discover, that the image that I held in my mind all these years was not true. The fainting was due to lack of anemia, right? So sometimes the belief system that we hold of ourselves, sometimes when you go back, you're thinking, how come no one thought about it? But that rejection, I rejected myself. I rejected my true self for many, many years, right into my adult life. And then 2017 happened, and I'm waking up and I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking, why am I so self-conscious? Because unconsciously you do things that you don't even know, but it stems from a moment in your life that actually triggers that moment. So every time I'll go to the store, I'm putting on a pair of pants or a dress, I'll be the first one to critique myself. I look in the mirror. What do I see? I see somebody who is not in my mind. The image that I have in my mind, it's still there. So I see this beautiful woman standing in front of me and I'm like, that's not you. Take it off. I take off and I'll put on something else. So that self-critique followed me for many, many years. That would be the first one, rejecting myself. And I don't know, whoever is listening to this, please, as you're listening to all of our story, if it is something that resonates with you, please share with us, because somebody else can benefit from, because we're talking about our own experiences and how we overcame them. So that would be the first one. The second one would be just growing up, as the eldest in the family, My father had traveled, overseas for work. So he wasn't there as a young, growing up, he wasn't there for almost 10 years. So I miss that, right? I miss that father figure in our home. And my mother raised us, all five of siblings, right? And I miss that male figure in my life. And just like Nakeisha said, you go out, look out for men who you're trying to see who will fit in, and there's that void. And that was the void that I always had, but I did not realize that's the void. So I meet this man who I got married to, great men as they were, and we all come in as wounded souls. Okay. So I meet these two men separately, who I had a daughter and I had a son with. And I see where I will look at them and I will feel like there's a sense of rejection. There's a sense of void. Now I understand it's the void that I wanted them to feel, but they could never feel it, because that void, there was only one man who could fill that void, and that was my father. And I love him. I never resented him for being away, because I knew he went there for work. But there's that void, and there's this sense of abandonment, like Jules mentioned, right? And that sense of abandonment or rejection creates that void that most of us are not even aware of. So when I met my exes, as wonderful as they are, because they're the father of my two children, and I respect them for that, I realized every moment I always felt there was that sense of abandonment. There was always that sense of rejection. And it created that something within me, right? And you feel like, what happens when you feel that? You feel you're unworthy, you feel you're unloved, you feel you're not good enough. And these are the things that we need to start talking about, because where there is a sense of rejection, abandonment, or void, what comes up? Comes up, you're not good enough, you're not beautiful enough, you're not worthy enough. And that is the root cause of everything that happens in our life. It directs the relationship that we attract. It directs the people that we meet. And now I have a better understanding of that. So enough of this. I'll come back and share with you how I overcame that. Nakeisha, going back to your story, what were the things that you did on your end that helped you move from feeling that way? I know you touched on a few things, but do you mind just elaborating what you did on your end to overcome that, and how has it worked for you since then?
I think for me, the biggest thing that I did was started to write. I start writing out my pain, right? All the people that have hurt me in the past, including my mother. I felt that I was rejected by my mom as well, because she sent us here to Canada to live with a man that we didn't know. Like, even though I knew it was my destiny, when we got here, when whatever that destiny was it what we imagined? I felt resentment for her, because I'm like, what kind of mother send their child away, right? Because I needed her. I grew up with my mom. I grew up with, like, in the Caribbean, you have family. I mean, family, right? Cousin, auntie, uncle, everybody. And here in Canada, we had nobody. We only had my dad, my stepmom, my stepsister, my brother and sister. That's it. That's all the family we had. So there's no extra support. There's nobody to go to when times are hard, or when, things at home does not is not the way that you used to, because this is not the way that we were brought up. We were always brought up with people around us that love us and care us, even though, as a Caribbean, the word love is not a word that was used, but they were there for you. So you know that you belong. So for me, just writing out all those little things that, all my pain. And one day I sat there, and while I was writing, it's like a light bulb went off. And it's like, wow, this is no longer you, Nakeisha. This is your past, and this is for somebody else, to help somebody else to heal while they're going through what they're going through. So then my story now became a book, my crossroad. And the reason why I call it my crossroad is because we all go through a crossroad. And I think at that point I was at a crossroad, and I had to choose whether I go left or right, right? Do I sit here and dwell in the past, or do I look at my past, take the lessons, recognize that this was my destiny. I had to go through what I go through to be who I am supposed to be. And so I start looking at each chapter. And as I write my story, I was able to see the you know, what each chapter of my life, how I was able to utilize those skills now, and how it helped me to evolve into the person that I'm becoming. So I was able to release all that negative energy with on paper. And it was so hard for me to even publish my book. I hold on to it for a while because I'm like, I kept telling myself, this is my story. I can't tell other people my story. This is me. I felt attached to it. And good thing I had a coach that said, no, give me a date, you're going to release your book. And then I released it. And once I released my book, and everybody was reading my book, you know, and everybody, I remember going to work one day and a coworker is like, Nakeisha, I went through the content, the table of content, and I went to the juicy part, you know. I was like, oh no, you know, but I think that like that was the best thing for me because everything that was in here is now out there. And once everybody knows, it's no longer a secret. It can't hold you back anymore because it was released. And 1 month after that, I was able to go to my doctor and say, hey, I need time off work. Right. And I took time off work. I didn't know how long I needed off work. And I took unpaid time off work. And I just sat home one day and I said, okay, my life, this is not my life. I need a new life. And I sat there and I said, God, I'm going to sit here until you tell me what to do because I can't go back to that old life. And that old life, meaning the old workplace, because I stayed in a toxic environment for over 16 years. And I think because I thought I didn't deserve better. Right. I thought that this was it. I should be grateful to be in this environment because, you know, and so when I was able to like, okay, this is it. But that book, releasing my story, gave me the strength to say, hey, I deserve better. And I was home for 30 days. And within that 30 days is when I got the vision and I start planning, you know, my retirement from my work. And I started my own business. And, you know, and I haven't looked back since. And it's been 3 years, you know, and now I have two organizations. So that pivoted moment where, you know, as I said earlier, I gave birth to Nakeisha. Nakeisha was born at 39. You know, I was able to release all that negative thing. And the biggest part for me too was the forgiveness. I have a chapter in my book that I call the forgiveness chapter. And it's easy to to say we know what forgiveness is. It's a word that is so used loosely, but I truly did not know what forgiveness was. It's a word that we grew up with. Oh, forgive your neighbor, forgive, forgive, forgive. But do you really know what forgiveness was? So I had to research. That was the only chapter I researched. I had to research what forgiveness was. And when I learned that, one of the things that stick to me is that forgiveness is when, say for instance, if I loan you some money, fadhwa, I loan you $100,000, right? And that's a lot of money. And if I could look at you and say, you know, fadhwa, it's okay. You could keep that money, right? You don't have to pay me back. Forgiveness is like a debt that you forgive. Like I just give it to you and said, you don't owe me anything. And then, so now, fadhwa, you're not expected to pay me that money back, right? Because I told you it's yours. And that's when I learned that forgiveness was like that. It was a debt that you just forgive and say, you don't have to pay me. I don't expect you to pay me, and you don't expect to pay me. It's done. It's over. We move forward, right? And that was the pivoted moment of my research. I'm like, okay, I forgive, right? And another key thing that I learned from forgiveness is that I could forgive you and choose the type of relationship I want. I have a choice to choose the type of relationship I want from you. So not everybody you forgive, you're going to be back to them and have a good relation. You get to choose. Nakeisha, get to choose the type of relationship I want from you. And that's it. And then everything was like, wow, my life moved forward since then.
That's just amazing. Thank you for sharing. And you touched on a couple of things here, you know, forgiveness and choice, right? Forgiveness goes a long way. And just like you know, just like you said, forgiveness is used very loosely, right? And I have learned the power of forgiveness. And the biggest favor you can do yourself is forgiving yourself first. Because if you don't do that, you're carrying all this burden that is not yours to carry, right? And rejection, and as long as you have rejection and resentment, you have no room for forgiveness. But if you learn how to let go of each one of those, then you realize the power of forgiveness. And just like you mentioned, you can choose to be friends or keep the relations going with whomever you choose to. That's powerful. Just because I forgave you doesn't mean we're going to be best friends. I forgave you because I want my peace of mind. I want my life back on track. I forgave you for my sake, for my own peace of mind as well. So that's really powerful. Jules, what about you? How did you overcome your rejection and the experiences that you experienced in your childhood?
I would say that there's no right answer for that one, in the fact that I'm continually working on it. Continual process, right? But I would say the toolbox, the skill set that I use is one that I've discovered, one that I've worked with people with because I found it works so well for me. And that is, I'll go into a meditation and connect with myself and or have somebody else facilitate with me. But as soon as a part of me comes up that is feeling rejected, and it's from when I was a child in different ways. There was a moment where I was doing karaoke, excited to sing in front of a crowd of people, and my sister and my mom disappeared, and they were nowhere to be seen because they were so embarrassed. And it was not that long ago that I had a moment where I went back in time to be with that little girl. I think I was maybe 12. And I needed to be there with her and let go of my mom and my sister, let go of the whole room full of people, and actually just have it be me and her, and just let her know that I was there and tell her that I loved her. And you guys have probably heard of Ho'oponopono. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. So at that point, I told her I loved her. And she didn't believe me at first, and she looked down, and then she didn't believe me. And I told her, I am you from the future, and I'm telling you that I love you. So take as long as you need to, but I'm not leaving. Just let it soak in. And eventually she actually started to believe me. And at that point I said, I'm sorry. And the I'm sorry wasn't, me apologizing to her for anything. It was more the I'm sorry for thinking that you were separate from me, for leaving this memory as something that was disconnected from who I am, but also created all these patterns. Like, I'm sorry that you were left there, and I'm here now. So it's almost like I rejected a part of myself, like you had said, Fadhwa, in that moment, but I'm here to reclaim it by being present with you. I'm sorry for holding you separate from me. And then the please forgive me, young self, for holding you separate, for letting you feel like you were alone, for not coming back to visit you, for not acknowledging all the things that you were feeling in that moment. But please forgive me, I'm here now. And always waiting for her response. And when I said I love you, like I said, it took a while for her to actually believe that she was worthy of my love, until she smiled, and I knew that we were at that point where I could say I'm sorry. And she was open to receiving that. That wasn't hard for her. And the please forgive me, she was immediately, of course I forgive you. I love you. Like this relationship was unfaltering. There was no question that she would forgive me. She was just so happy to have me there. And then that last vibration of gratitude, of thankfulness, of this uh, cohesion of energies that had never fully found that bond and re-immersed together, to then have that where I know her and she knows me, and we both know that we're supported and that we love each other. And now she's on my team. It's like now I have an inner team, and obviously she's just one of them. I always think of myself as having a team of all of the different times in my life when I was challenged or traumatized, rejected, fearful, scared. And now after having these conversations, it's like I'm collecting all of these parts of me. And sometimes I'll say, oh, well, we'd love to. And somebody will say, we? I'm like, oh, well, me and, my whole team. Because we are all in this cohesion, in this beautiful collaboration together now, because I have connected with them, and now they support me and I support them, and it's a really powerful relationship. And it's like, the more I can look at those past situations and connect and befriend all of those times when I did abandon myself or felt frozen in time because I couldn't not be at the time. Now, as I collect them, I feel myself more integral, more whole, and more integrated with every situation that comes up. And that's how I've worked through not just rejection, but all of the pieces of past trauma so far, and continue.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And you actually talked about Ho'oponopono. I am actually a practitioner, Ho'oponopono practitioner. And I studied this and it helped me, Jules, just like you said, going by and saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And this is what reconnected me to my inner child. And this is what helped me overcome the image that I had in my mind. That image that had controlled me and took over my life, my entire life. I was able to release that, having that conversation with that inner child in me who had held on to this image for so long, to say, hey, you've grown now, you're in your 40s. I'm 45 now, and it's looking at that and saying, you're not to that 16-year-old, you're not that 10-year-old girl, you're now a 45-year-old woman. Embrace who you are, right? And it's, for me, how I overcame that rejection, rejecting myself at the age of 16, was simply going back to making peace with that 16-year-old. Forgive me for not recognizing you. Forgive me for not embracing your change and your growth, because that affected me even professionally. It wasn't just physically or in my personal life, it affected me professionally when it came to growth and development and looking at different opportunities, because I never thought myself worthy of that, so making peace with that. The other thing I would like to touch upon is that self-acceptance, right? Dealing with rejection, part of it for you to release that rejection is to accept, for whatever reason, whatever has happened for a particular reason that is beyond your control, and it's there to teach you a lesson. And what is the lesson that you can learn from it? And how can you take that lesson and use it moving you forward? So for me right now, what I do is I look at it as, okay, what did I learn from that experience? What do I continue to learn from the experience? I'm growing. It's accepting, and you touched on about gratitude, but just taking that moment and saying, thank you for this moment. I look back into my relationships. I look back and I say, I was there for a purpose. They were there for a purpose, and we learned something from it. So instead of looking from it with the lenses of rejection, now I look at those experiences from the lenses of education, from lenses of learning and growth. Now I don't look at it as rejection or abandonment. I look at it as, I am learning and I'm growing. And what can I take from that experience that will move me forward? There was something I made a note here that dealing with rejection, for me, actually, I don't know about you guys, but it's not just self-acceptance, it's the self-love, because that's where it's the fruit, right? That's where you're planting that seed. The only way you can get rid of rejection is, now I don't compromise. I don't compromise. And before I used to be like, oh, you can compromise to make peace. You can compromise to do this. You can compromise to do that, right? I thought, and that's how I grew up thinking, we are supposed to compromise. But I don't believe in compromise now, because what I do is I believe that every minute you compromise, you're actually giving a piece of you away. And every time you do that, you give away a piece of you, give a piece of you. What happens? You'll be left with nothing in the end. So what I do now is I don't compromise. if I'm giving something, I will give it truly 100% with no expectations of return, because that's my intention. I'm going to give, I'm going to love with no expectations to be loved back. If I'm going to receive the love, well and good, I'll take it. But I'm just going to give myself. I'm going to be kind to all without expecting somebody else to be kind to me. Right? So when you do that, there is no room to compromise. Then you're not doing half things, right? You're not loving halfway. You're not being kind to somebody halfway. Give yourself all, and there's no room for rejection, because you have no compromise. You're not compromising on anything, and you have no expectations as to what you're receiving back, because your intention is set on, I'm going to give myself 100% in what I do. What comes to me, I'll take it. Good or bad, I'll take it and I'll deal with it.
And it sounds like when you say that, it's honoring you, but also honoring whoever else is in that situation, and respecting yourself and others, that there doesn't need to be a compromise if you can do that.
Yes, yes. And there's no expectation there, right? You're just giving all. And, you know, if it, by doing that, it will come back to you. If you set the intention, you know, when you give yourself fully, it will come back to you, but it will come back to you in maybe in different ways. You know, you may give it in a certain way, but the receiving will become, maybe will come from a different person, you know, maybe not necessarily through that person, right? And I think rejection also comes from expectations. You know, when you're doing something and your intention is for self-serving need, right? And then you do something and you have an expectation. And then when that doesn't happen, rejection sets in, because you had a certain expectation, you know. But for any reason, right? For any reason, especially when you're young, you're looking back and you come back, like now, Nakeisha, when you go back and look at, as I understand myself, even now, going back, I can always look back and say, wow, I don't even need to be rejectful towards this incident, because this person was dealing with whatever they were dealing at that moment. But when you're young, you don't see that, right? You're only seeing your own, what you're seeing, what you believe it to be. But the reality is you don't know half the truth of what's happening on the other side. It's only when you get out of it later on, when you have that awakening moment, you realize, I've been holding on to something that wasn't even worthwhile holding. You know, I'll mention something interesting. I was watching Gary Zukav video, and he was talking about the seed of the soul. And that was a very transformational moment for me that day. It was I call it the emotional breakthrough. He was saying, he was replying to a lady who had sent him a message. And the lady said she had a very strained relationship with her mother. How can I fix this relationship? She asked. So he asked her a very important question. He said, ask yourself, write down, take a piece of paper and write down the things that you reject your mother. Right? Write it down, the things you reject her for. And then take another piece of paper and write down the things the things that you do that you feel is rejectful towards others. So he said, and then go back to the list and look at how the two lists resemble to each other. He said, chances are it's going to be very identical. And he said, just look at it. Like when you're pointing a finger to someone, how many fingers are pointing towards you? And that was just like, oh my God, chances are 3 fingers are pointing right back at you, right? So what you're accusing of somebody else of doing, you yourself are actually guilty of. And that was just,
Yes.
you know, oftentimes we're too fast in judging someone or calling out on someone or rejecting someone for what they did to us. But then if we go back and ask ourselves, okay, what am I guilty of? I'm accusing this person of doing this and this to me. What have I done to counteract that action, what they're doing? What have I done that's opposite of what they've done to me? You know, if I'm accusing them of not loving me enough, am I loving them enough? You know, if I'm accusing them of they're not spending time with me, are you spending time with them? Are you giving them time? You know, oftentimes what we accuse other people of is what we are guilty of, oftentimes. So, and that's where rejection comes in. We start rejecting people because that void within us, we want it to be filled, but somebody else needs to fill it, or we need to fill that void. Your thoughts, Jules?
Yeah, that's it's really powerful in the fact that, like you said, the projections, we are projecting into the world what we want, and we what we think we need. And in reality, like you just stated, it's the same resonance, whether it's for the outside world or for you, but we prefer to put responsibility elsewhere versus on ourselves. And I think, through all of our conversations here today, we've all stated that the shift in our ability to be able to look at rejection differently is actually not about blaming others, not about, saying, oh, they've got to do this or it's because of them, which happens to be really easy and natural for us. The hard work is actually bringing it back internally and actually, recognizing the projection is actually coming from us as the projector and looking at like what's being projected, and let me look at that. Yeah, so I think that was really nicely put how you said that. It's like, oh yeah, it's something in the projector. It's not the picture that's out here, and it's not that we're going to point and pick out the things that are wrong here. That's not going to change anything unless we go back to what's actually projecting the picture.
Mhm. Yeah. Nakeisha?
Yes. Powerful, powerful, powerful. I love what you're saying. And while you were speaking, Fadhwa, I was just reflecting back on, and I hope our listeners are reflecting back in their life, because I was just reflecting at the areas that I feel rejected within all the relationship, like my close relationship within my life. And I could pinpoint and I could say, yeah, you're not doing this and you're not doing this. And because you're not doing this is why I'm not doing this. Right. And it's so easy to say that. But now when you're speaking, I'm like, wait, I'm not getting what I want because I'm not giving what I want,
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, poof, you
Yes.
know? So
Light bulb
whatever,
moment.
yeah, it's like, okay. So
Yes.
now I need to flip the switch.
Yes.
I need to give you what I want.
Mhm.
So in return, you could reflect that.
Yes.
And I pray and I hope that our listeners today is learning so much from this, because honestly, and there was another thing that you said, Fadwa, that resonate with me is when you're talking about people do what they do because they have that saying, hurt people. And part of my transition into who I am and that forgiving piece was recognizing like the three people that I think hurt me the most was my dad, my mom, and my stepmother. And those three people, right? I had to recognize, like, say, for my mom, she sent me to Canada for a better life. That was the vision. I knew this from the moment I was born. This was my destiny. So why was I upset with her? And it's because my vision of what my life should have been wasn't. Right. And there's no way if my mom knew it, my life wasn't going to be what she imagined. She had a vision too for my life. My dad, he come from a huge family. And, like my grandmother had maybe 14 kids, couple twins, like about five sets of twins or something like that. Right. So he come from a huge family. And, so he did not know how to love the way that a father should love, right? And he has his own pain. And my stepmother, oh my goodness. While I was writing my book, I had to reflect back at her. And one of the things that I did was remember, like I start remembering the stories that she would tell us about her childhood and what she has gone through and the trauma that she was going through. But as a child, you don't really reflect on those things and you don't really recognize because you're hurted. And this person is supposed to protect you. And this person is supposed to do what they're supposed to do for their child. But I was able to reflect back. I'm like, oh my goodness,
Mm.
she is hurting so bad. And, she has gone through a lot of mental trauma and she's still going through a lot of mental trauma. So there's no way she could mother us the way that we expected her to. And even reflecting on her own child and recognizing that she wasn't able to mother her own child either. So there's no way she was able to do that. So just reflecting back and recognizing that they're not hurting you because they want to hurt you. They're not rejecting you because they want to reject you. They're rejecting you because they reject themselves. And because they don't know how to love themselves, they don't know how to nurture themselves, like what Jules was talking about, nurturing that inner child, nurturing that inner person that need us. And we have to be at that place where we have to do that for ourselves. We have to learn how to, love ourselves, forgive ourselves, nurture ourselves. And it will take a while. It will take a long time for some of us because this is new and this is like something different. And how do you do that? That's 10 years ago. That's 20 years. What do you mean love my 12-year-old self? I'm no longer 12, I'm 40. Someone will like, what are you talking about, Jewel? How do you have a conversation with your 12-year-old self? Are you crazy? As the young people would say, cray cray, right?
Yes.
But that 12-year-old girl is stuck within you because she's still hurting.
Mm-hmm.
And without you nurturing that 12-year-old person, and I want to talk to our listener, find what age you're stuck at. Because we all are stuck at an age. And that's why we can't move forward. And we got to figure out, like, okay, what age am I stuck at? And start to heal that inner child at that age. Because until she's ill or he's ill, we're not going to move forward. We're still going to be that. For my age, it was 16 when I moved out of my dad's house. For Julie, it was 12. For Fadhwa, it's a different age. What age are you stuck at? Let's give her all the loving and forgive her so we could forgive ourselves and move forward. I love this conversation today that we're having.
Well,
Mhm.
thank you. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? It's I hope our listeners today will be able to pick something from here, resonate, and just like both Nakeisha and Jules mentioned, we all have gone through experiences in our lives, right? So pick, you may not remember the age, maybe you may remember an incident, right? So go back to that incident, or maybe an experience, or maybe a time in your life that you're still holding on to. And sometimes you don't even realize. I never
Mhm.
realized that rejecting myself would actually take all my life, like take control of my life, right? So sometimes you don't even realize. But how do you look into it? Look at the action steps. Pay attention to the things that you do. Are you critical of yourself? Do you critique yourself? What are the feelings and emotions? So start paying attention to that, and then maybe start making a journal. Why do you feel this? Because I guarantee you, whatever you're feeling goes back to when you're young. Everything that we do today goes back. It can be traced to our childhood. Yes, I'm not saying all our childhood memories are really bad. No, but it's the ones that really stuck with us. That's the one that actually takes control. Okay, I'm not talking about the best childhood memories. We all have those, right? But it's the incidents or small experiences that you went through that will stick and that will shape the rest of your life. So just pay attention to those things. So we can leave you with maybe today just some exercises that you can do today. I'll invite Jules. I know Jules and I, we've done Ho'oponopono. We're very familiar with that. And I'll just touch upon making that intention. And Jules, maybe you can just bring in and just do a quick exercise so we can wrap up the program. And then I'll bring Nakeisha back. And just set your intention. Set your intention today after listening in. Look at the experiences that you've experienced. Because remember, those experiences are there to make you stronger, not weaker. It's just how we perceive it that we allow it to take control over us and we let it just take over us, right? But every experience is there to strengthen you. Every experience is there to bring you courage and strength and resiliency, right? So if you look at it that way, you can overcome it. You can learn from it, all right? So just like Nakeisha mentioned today, looking back at the people that she knows that she can trace back who hurt her, you can start with that. Who are the people that you hold accountable for hurting you or bringing that pain? Maybe start making a list of those people. And then maybe going back and revisit now in your adult life and look at it. And sometimes you'll be surprised. You'll be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I held on to this for so long. And maybe it's the time for you to release it because maybe it's not your burden to carry. Okay. So remember, you project what you're feeling inside onto others. And just like what Nakeisha just said, Give what you want for yourself. Share. If it's love, give love. Whatever it is, just project it. Counteract whatever you're feeling with the intention. So Jules, I'll invite you to do a quick exercise for our listeners and our audience today, and then we can start wrapping up. Thank you.
Awesome. So I will invite all of you to just take a couple of breaths. And as you're breathing, just knowing that we're setting that intention to bring your awareness to a part of you inside that's been frozen, that's been caught in time. And just allow that part of you to have your full attention. And notice the sounds and the colors. Maybe there's words or vibrations. Yeah, maybe it's a memory, or maybe it's completely abstract, but just noticing it. Whatever wants to show up there, just honoring that it's a part of you and allowing it the opportunity to have your full attention, and let it know that your attention is there for it to show you whatever it wants to. And from that point, and knowing that you can catch this part of you anytime you need to, allowing yourself to tell that part of you, I love you, and just notice its response. You can hang out in this space as long as you need to. For the sake of this exercise, I'm just going to move along to the next one, but do know you can do this at whatever pace you need to. And with the response from that part of you, maybe having had a conversation and saying, I'm sorry for noticing you separately from me, for leaving you in this time and space frozen, but I'm here now. Just noticing its response. Taking a breath and fully honoring whatever it wants to show you or have you feel or see. And when you're ready, moving forward to say, please forgive me for leaving you here, from holding you separate. And notice its response. And the last piece, saying thank you. Just exuding with that gratitude, being present with this part of you. And letting its gratitude, it's there to move through you, remembering you are both your future and your past, but you're present with it right now with your attention. Just taking a couple of breaths, and letting yourself truly feel that, and letting all of those new connections, dynamics, relationship integrate with your breath. Knowing you can come back here whenever you want to, and also giving your body permission to pull you into relationship with it whenever it needs to. Knowing these steps are always here for you. And with this last breath, thanking that part of you for bringing you back into this new relationship. And when you're ready, just opening up your eyes slowly and just noticing that difference through your whole body. And knowing it will continue to connect in the days and weeks and months to come, but this is never a wasted experience. Thanks, fadhwa.
Wow.
Thanks everybody for jumping into that.
Yes. Ooh, that was just amazing. That was amazing. I hope our viewers and our listeners were able to, take on that exercise, and I hope you were able to reflect. And I really hope you'll be able to benefit from this video today. And you can always follow us on YouTube, The Gems of Life Show. Please subscribe, like, comment, share whatever you have learned from this message today. Follow us every Friday on CKMS Radio Waterloo 102.7 from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. I will bring Nakeisha to send in our last message here. Nakeisha?
You know what? I don't want to add anything to that peaceful tranquility that Joel just said. I just, the only thing I could say is just be present and meditation implemented in your life, because it is something that is wonderful. It helps with clarity, focus, productivity. It helps you so much. And thank you, Joel, for this wonderful ending. I truly appreciate you. I truly appreciate our audience. I truly appreciate you, Fadhwa. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nakeisha. I truly appreciate you both as well, and our audience and our listeners. And as always, we are here to communicate with you. And I really hope that this video will be able to help you move past that sense of rejection. Remember, no compromising when it comes to you. Do not compromise your worthiness and who you are for whatever reason. Okay, I hope I will hear from you soon. And remember, subscribe, like, comment, or share in our website or our YouTube channel. As always, Jules and Nakeisha, it's been wonderful to have you both here today.
Thank you so much, you guys. Thanks to everybody listening. You guys are amazing, spreading so much.
Thank you for both sharing your journey and your story with us as well. As always, we always leave you with this message. Aspire to
inspire.
Yes, we all aspire to inspire each one of you. Till then, stay well and safe. Take care.
Bye.